Commander Naisol rubbed her tired eyes as she stared at the massive holographic display floating in front of her. The Zilani Federation monitoring station was quiet, except for the soft hum of computers scanning deep space for signals. It was supposed to be another boring night shift in the Outer Rim territories? Then the emergency alert started blaring. "Commander, we're getting something," called out technician Kim Woojin from his console. His fingers flew across the control panel as static filled the communications array. It's a distress signal. Multiple sources. Na leaned forward in her chair. The hologram shifted, showing a distant star system she recognized as Kepler 442. What she saw made her stomach drop. Dozens of small blips were fleeing from larger, more aggressive signatures. "Put it through the translators," she ordered. The speakers crackled to life. Even through the universal translator, the panic was unmistakable. Voices of the Threnody people filled the command center, mothers calling for their children, fathers begging for rescue ships, entire families screaming as something hunted them through space. "Great stars above," whispered Lieutenant Cho Min-ho, Na's second in command. The tall Zilani officer's blue skin had gone pale. "Those are civilian ships. Look at the scanner readings. No weapons, no shields. They're defenseless." Na's jaw tightened. Her human father had taught her to read faces, even alien ones. She could see the terror and the Threnody expressions as their video feeds came through. These weren't soldiers or politicians. These were ordinary people running for their lives. "Who's attacking them?" she asked. Woojin's hand shook as he adjusted the sensors. "Commander, those are Korthok Empire signatures. Battlecruisers, at least 20 of them. They're hunting the civilian ships like animals." The room fell silent. Everyone knew about the Korthok Empire. They were the nightmare that kept peaceful species awake at night. Slavers, conquerors, and killers who turned entire worlds into prison camps. They didn't negotiate. They didn't show mercy. Just took what they wanted. "Should we respond?" Minho asked quietly. Can we respond?" Na stared at the tactical display. The Federation had maybe 30 ships spread across 12 systems, most of them explorers and research vessels. The Korthok had sent a full battle fleet to wipe out the Threnody. "We barely have ships to defend our own borders," she said, her voice heavy with frustration. "If we send our fleet there, the Korthok might attack our worlds next." But she couldn't stop watching the desperate faces on the screen. Her human heritage made her different from her Zilani colleagues. While they calculated odds and political consequences, she saw families dying. She saw children who would never grow up if someone didn't act. The Kepler system was dangerously close to the quarantine zone. That empty region of space where the infamous Deathworlders lived. Most galactic species avoided that area entirely. The stories said that the beings from that region were too violent, too unpredictable, too dangerous for civilized contact. Na made her decision. "Send the signal to the Terran Defense Network," she said firmly. Minho's eyes widened. "Commander, are you sure? They're hearing right. Crazy enough to help strangers? No. Finished. That's exactly what we need right now." She uploaded the Threnody distress call to a secure channel aimed at Earth. If anyone in the galaxy would charge into impossible odds to save people they'd never met, it was the humans. After all, being a little crazy was sometimes the only way. To do the right thing, Admiral Park Taman was finishing his morning coffee when the priority alert chimed on his personal communicator. The hot liquid nearly spilled across his desk as he grabbed the device and saw the red emergency signal flashing. "We have an urgent transmission from the Outer Rim," came the voice of his aide, Lieutenant Lee Dobbin. "It's a distress call. Multiple alien species. Civilians under attack." Park was already moving toward the command center before she finished speaking. His boots echoed through the corridors of Terran Defense Headquarters as officers snapped to attention. Something about the urgency in Dobbin's voice told him this wasn't a routine border dispute. The main tactical display showed everything he needed to know. Dozens of small civilian ships fleeing in panic. Massive Korthak battle cruisers closing in for the kill. Families screaming across the void of space as their hunters got closer. "How long ago did this start?" I asked. his eyes never leaving the screen. Approximately 4 hours, sir. The signal came through the Zilani Federation monitoring station. A half-human commander named Nayisal forwarded it to us. Park nodded grimly. Smart woman. She knew the Federation couldn't handle the Korthak Empire alone, and she knew humans well enough to understand they'd respond. Sir, Captain Wu Hansel stepped forward, his face troubled. The Kepler system is 3 weeks away at maximum speed. We don't even know these aliens. The Threnody aren't part of any alliance with Earth. Park turned to face his captain. Wu was a good officer, practical and careful. Those were valuable traits in peacetime. But sometimes, practicality got in the way of doing what was right. They're asking for help, Park said simply. That's enough. But sir, we'd be risking 12 ships and 3,000 crew members for complete strangers. What if it's a trap? What if the Korthok turn on us next? We have our own borders to protect. Park walked closer to the display, watching as another civilian ship's signal went dark. Someone's family had just died while they stood here debating politics. Captain, when you were 7 years old, did you ask if the firefighter who pulled you from that burning building was a stranger? Wu's face softened. No, sir. Did you care what planet he came from, or what species he was? No, sir. Then prep the Third Fleet for immediate departure. Full battle configuration. The command center exploded into activity. Within minutes, alerts were going out to 12 warships across the solar system. Massive dreadnought resilience powered up its engines. Destroyers Thunder and Lightning began loading ammunition. The carrier Defiance launched its fighter squadrons for escort duty at the Luna spaceport. Alien observers watched the human fleet mobilize with a mixture of awe and confusion. A tall gray Zalarian shook his head as he watched the warships jump. To hyperspace, one by one, look at them go, he muttered to his companion. A insectoid klaxon traitor. Be weeks to reach complete strangers who might already be dead. No guarantee of payment, no strategic advantage, no territorial gain. The klaxon clicked his mandibles thoughtfully. Typical Deathworlder behavior. No sense of self-preservation whatsoever. That's what makes them dangerous, the Zalarian replied. They'll fight for anyone. Within 6 hours of receiving the distress call, 12 human warships had vanished into hyperspace. Racing toward a battle they might not survive for people they'd never met, because someone had asked for help, and that was enough. Captain Li Jinwu gripped his command chair as the destroyer Thunder shuddered out of hyperspace. The 3-week journey had felt like an eternity. Every officer on the bridge was anxious to see what they'd find in the Kepler system. What they saw made Jinwu's blood run cold. The main display showed pure chaos. Dozens of small Threnody civilian ships were scattered across space, desperately trying to escape from massive Korthok battlecruisers. It looked like wolves hunting sheep. The alien raiders were taking their time, picking off the fleeing families, one by one. My God, whispered Navigation Officer Kim So-young, her face pale as she watched a Threnody transport explode in a ball of fire. They're not even trying to capture them. They're just killing for fun. Lieutenant Beek Junho, at the communications station, turned to his captain. Sir, first contact protocols require us to announce our presence and attempt diplomatic contact before any hostile action. We need to identify ourselves and state our intentions to all parties involved. Jinwu watched another civilian ship's life signs disappear from the sensors. Somewhere in that explosion, families had just died while he sat here thinking about paperwork. Screw protocols, he snapped, his voice cutting through the bridge like a blade. Those are civilians being slaughtered down there. All ships, engage immediately. Sir, shouldn't we at least try to? Junho started. The only communication the Korthok understand is weapons fire, Jinwu interrupted. Tactical lock onto the nearest raider. All weapons, maximum power. The Thunder's engines roared too. Life as Jinwu pushed his ship into a steep dive toward the battle zone. Behind him, 11 other human warships followed without question. The massive dreadnought Resilience opened fire with cannons that could crack a moon in half. On the Korthok, command ship Admiral Vrek stared at his tactical display in confusion. What are those ships doing? He growled. They're flying straight at us, Don't they know we outnumber them 3-1? His weapons officer's voice cracked with panic. Sir, they're not slowing down. They're accelerating. A destroyer is on a collision course with our starboard flank. The thunder screamed past the Korthok cruiser at point-blank range, its weapons tearing through armor that should have been impenetrable. Jinwoo yanked his ship into a sharp turn that should have snapped it in half, using an asteroid field as cover while his gunners reloaded. Impossible, Rex whispered. No sane captain would fly through those asteroids. The gravitational forces alone would crush a ship. But human ships weren't following alien logic. The destroyer Lightning used a gas giant's gravity well to slingshot around behind the Korthok formation. The cruiser Defiance launched fighters that dove between enemy ships like angry wasps, striking at impossible angles. The Korthok battle computers couldn't process what they were seeing. These humans fought like they had nothing to lose, treating certain death as just another tactical option. Within minutes, half the Korthok raider fleet was floating debris. On the surviving Threnody transport Hope's Dawn, Beltar watched through his viewing port as unknown warships tore through his people's tormentors. The strange vessels moved like living things, dancing between laser blasts that should have destroyed them. Who are they? Asked his navigator, her large eyes wide with wonder. I don't know, Veltar replied softly. But they came to save us. The humans had arrived. Everything had changed. Admiral Vrex of the Korthok Empire had conquered 43 worlds in his career. He'd faced every type of military formation known to galactic civilization. But nothing had prepared him for this. What are they doing? He demanded, staring at his tactical display in complete confusion. The human ships were moving in patterns that made no sense. They dove through asteroid fields that should have crushed them. They flew so close to planets that the gravity should have torn their hulls apart. Sir, their destroyer just used the moon's gravity to launch itself at impossible speed, reported his tactical officer, voice trembling. It's heading straight for our battle line. Should we intercept? Of course we should intercept, Vrex snapped. Why is that even a question? But before his ships could react, the human destroyer had already whipped around another asteroid, disappearing from sensors only to reappear behind their formation. It was like trying to catch smoke with bare hands. On the bridge of the massive Dreadnought Resilience, Admiral Park Taman watched the chaos unfold with grim satisfaction. His fleet was outnumbered 5-1, but numbers meant nothing when your enemy couldn't predict your next move. Begin Operation Whirlwind, he ordered calmly. All ships, maximum aggression, sir. The Lightning is requesting permission to attempt. The spiral dive, reported Communications Officer Song Hai-Jin. Tot Park nodded. Tell Captain Choi to make it count. The destroyer Lightning suddenly broke away from the main formation and dove straight into the gravity well of a nearby gas giant. Every alien officer watching expected to see the ship torn apart by massive gravitational forces. Instead, the Lightning used the planet's own spin to accelerate beyond normal engine capacity, shooting out of the gravity well like a bullet from a gun. Impossible, breathed Vrex, as he watched the human ship streak across his display at speeds that shouldn't be survivable. Their crew should be dead from the acceleration alone. What the Korthak admiral didn't understand was that humans had been testing the limits of physics since they first looked up at the stars, while other species built comfortable, safe ships. Humans built vessels that could survive anything their crews were crazy enough to attempt. The real shock came when the human Marines launched their boarding pods. Sir, enemy troops are launching directly at our flagship, reported Vrex's security chief. No landing craft, no proper assault formation. They're just jumping between ships and small pods. Vrex watched in horror as dozens of tiny human pods shot through space, some of them actually bouncing off asteroids to change direction. When the first pod smashed through the hull of his cruiser Dominator, alarms began screaming throughout his fleet. Inside the Korthok corridors, Sergeant Rue Minjun led his squad through passages filled with enemy soldiers. The Korthok were larger and stronger than humans, but they'd never faced opponents who fought with such raw determination. They're not retreating, the Korthok warrior screamed into his communicator. We have them surrounded, but they're advancing. Anyway, the Korthok battle computers had been programmed to handle every known military strategy. But humans didn't follow programming. They adapted, improvised, and attacked from directions that mathematically shouldn't exist. Within an hour, the proud Korthok formation had become a scattered mess of confused ships, trying to hit targets that refused to behave logically. The age of predictable warfare was over. Dr. Kess floated in the medical bay of the human frigate Mercy, her delicate Threnody features still showing traces of the terror she'd experienced just hours ago. Her people were herbivores, gentle beings who had never known real violence until the Korthok came. Now she found herself surrounded by the very creatures that galactic civilization called Deathworlders. She should have been terrified. These humans had just torn through Korthok battlecruisers like they were made of paper. She'd watched their ships perform impossible maneuvers, seen their marines fight with a ferocity that sent hardened Korthok warriors running in panic. But now, as she watched Captain Hoonmere carefully bandaging a wounded Threnody child, Kess felt only confusion. "Hold still, little one," Mireille said softly, her voice gentle as she worked on the child's injured arm. The same hands that had probably fired weapons just an hour ago were now moving with incredible delicacy, making sure not to cause any additional pain. The child, barely old enough to speak, looked up at the human captain with wide, trusting eyes. "Are you an angel?" the little Threnody whispered. Mireille smiled, though Kess could see exhaustion in the human's features. "No, sweetie. Just a person who wants to help." Kess activated her recording device, determined to document what she was witnessing. As a xenobiologist, she'd studied dozens of species, but nothing had prepared her for this contradiction. "Why did you come?" she asked Mireille when the captain had finished with the child. "Your people traveled 3 weeks through dangerous space to reach strangers you'd never met. You risked your lives for us." Mireille looked up from her medical supplies, her expression matter of fact, "Because you needed help. That's what people do." "That's what people do," Kess repeated, her translator struggling with the simple concept. "But we're not your people. We're not even the same species. We have no trade agreements, no military alliances, no mutual benefits." The human captain paused in her work, considering the question as if she'd never really thought about it before. "Does a drowning person ask about your species before you pull them from the water?" Around them, other human crew members were distributing their own food rations to hungry Threnody refugees. Kess watched a burly marine, still wearing battle armor scorched from combat, gently help an elderly Threnody to a comfortable sleeping area. "This is unprecedented," Kess murmured into her recorder. "These beings just engaged in brutal warfare. I watched them destroy enemy ships without mercy, saw them fight through corridors like unstoppable forces of nature. But now they share their food, tend our wounds, comfort our children." A human engineer approached, offering Kess a cup of something. "Warm. It's tea," he explained kindly. "Might help with the shock." Kess accepted the cup with trembling hands. The drink was unfamiliar but comforting. "I don't understand your species," she admitted. The engineer shrugged. "We don't always understand ourselves either. But when someone's in trouble, you help. It's not complicated." As Kess sipped her tea, she realized she was witnessing something that would change galactic civilization forever. Here was a species that could kill without hesitation when necessary, yet risk everything to save complete strangers. The galaxy had never seen anything like humans before, Admiral. Vrex stood on the command deck of his flagship, the massive dreadnought Iron Fist, watching through the viewport as 300 Korthok warships assembled around him. This was the largest fleet the Empire had deployed in 50 years. Ships stretched as far as the eye could see, battlecruisers, destroyers, carriers filled with fighter squadrons, and supply vessels loaded with enough firepower to level entire planets. His pride still burned from the humiliation at Kepler. A handful of human ships had made him look like a fool in front of his subordinates. Word of the defeat had already reached the Imperial Council, and questions were being asked about his competence. "These humans think they're clever," he growled to his assembled officers. "They got lucky once with their wild tactics and unpredictable movements. But luck doesn't work against overwhelming numbers." Captain Zeth, his tactical advisor, nodded enthusiastically. 300 ships against 12 Admiral. Even Deathworlders can't overcome those odds. Vrex activated the fleet-wide communication system. His voice boomed across every ship in the armada. Warriors of the Empire. We go to crush an infestation of Deathworlds that dared to challenge our might. They may fight like wild animals, but animals flee when faced with true power. Today we remind the galaxy why the Korthok Empire rules the stars. Thousands of alien warriors roared their approval across the communication channels. The fleet jumped to hyperspace as one massive force, confident that sheer numbers would solve any problem the humans might present. When they dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Kepler system, Vrex expected to find the human fleet waiting. In defensive formation, maybe hiding behind asteroids or trying to use the planets for cover. Instead, chaos erupted across his tactical displays. "Sir, we're detecting human ships attacking our supply depot at coordinates 749, reported his sensor officer, panic creeping into his voice. "What supply depot?" Vrex demanded. "We just arrived. The one we established last week during our first assault, sir." But that's not all. "We're also getting distress calls from the prison transport at coordinates 216. And our command post on the third moon is under attack?" Vrex stared at his display in disbelief. Red warning lights were blinking all across the star system. "How is that possible? Show me the human fleet position." "Sir, that's the problem. We can't find their main fleet. They're everywhere. On the bridge of the human dreadnought Resilience." Admiral Park Taman calmly sipped his coffee as reports flooded in from his scattered captains. He'd done something no military academy would ever teach. He'd split his tiny fleet into even smaller pieces and sent them across the entire star system. "Lightning reports successful strike on Korthok Fuel Depot," announced communications. "Officer Song Hai-jin. Thunder has disabled their prison transport and is evacuating more Threnody civilians. Mercy is hitting their medical supplies." "How can 12 ships be in 20 locations?" screamed a Korthok captain over the intercepted. "Communications. This is impossible." Park smiled grimly. While the Korthok had concentrated their massive fleet into one overwhelming hammer, he'd turned his ships into dozens of surgical scalpels, striking everywhere the enemy was weak. The bigger they were, the harder they fell. "Lieutenant Colonel." Ben Sujin studied the tactical hologram floating in front of her, showing every detail of Torak Prime. The planet looked like a fortress designed by paranoid lunatics. Massive shield generators created overlapping energy barriers that could stop a meteor impact. Orbital defense platforms bristled with enough weapons to destroy a small fleet. Surface-to-air missile batteries dotted the landscape like deadly flowers. And somewhere down there, behind all those defenses, thousands of innocent people were trapped in Korthok slave camps. "Ma'am, with respect, the mission parameters are impossible," said Major Lim Dongahan, her tactical officer. His voice was steady, but she could see the worry in his eyes. "Those shields have never been breached. The orbital platforms have overlapping fire zones. Even if we somehow got past all that, we'd need weeks to locate and extract the prisoners." Sujin continued staring at the hologram, her mind working through possibilities that her staff couldn't see yet. She'd been running impossible missions since she was a lieutenant, and she'd learned something important. Impossible was just another word for nobody's tried the right approach yet. "You're thinking about this wrong," she said finally. "We're trying to penetrate their defenses, sneak past their sensors, avoid their weapons. That's playing by their rules." "What do you mean, ma'am?" Sujin pointed at the largest shield generator on the planet's surface. It was a massive structure, protected by its own smaller shields and surrounded by defensive positions. "Then we don't penetrate them. We go through them." The briefing room fell silent. Everyone stared at their colonel as if she'd suggested flying to the sun for a vacation. "Ma'am," said Captain Park G1 from the pilot seat, "are you suggesting what?" "I think you're suggesting?" "The assault ship Retribution has the strongest hull design in the fleet," Sujin explained calmly. "It was built to survive atmospheric entry under combat conditions. If we hit that shield generator at the right angle with enough speed..." "That's not a tactical insertion," Dong Haiyan protested. "That's a controlled crash." The impact forces alone would kill everyone aboard. Sujin smiled, the same expression her instructors used to see right before she pulled off something that shouldn't have worked. Only if we follow normal deceleration procedures. But what if we don't decelerate normally? 3 hours later, the Retribution screamed through Torak Prime's atmosphere like a falling star. Instead of slowing down, the ship accelerated, using the planet's own gravity to increase its speed. At the last possible second, Captain Park fired every engine at maximum power, not to slow down, but to change their angle of impact. The ship hit the shield generator's primary power core like a guided missile. The explosion knocked out the entire planetary defense grid in one devastating blow. When the dust settled, Sujin and her team kicked open the twisted remains of their ship's doors and walked out into the smoking ruins of the Korthos, impenetrable fortress. Sometimes the best way through an impossible situation is to redefine what possible meant. Captain Yu Salbin stood on the bridge of her reconnaissance ship, watching something that had never happened before in galactic history. Her sensors were picking up dozens of ships from completely different species, all heading toward the same destination, the Kepler system. "Ma'am, we've got Zalarian cruisers approaching from the northeast," reported her navigation officer, Lieutenant Jang Maneskio. "Those are definitely Vorthan fighters coming in from the Outer Rim. I'm also detecting at least 3 different languages on the communication channels." Salbin shook her head in amazement. Just 2 weeks ago, these species wouldn't even trade with each other, let alone fight alongside one another. The Zalarians considered the Vorthans too aggressive. The Vorthans thought the Moran were too weak. Everyone avoided the Klaxon because of their strange customs. Now they were all flying together, toward a battle that wasn't even their own fight. "Put me through to the lead Zalarian vessel," Salbin ordered. The main screen flickered to life, showing the pale, elongated face of a Zalarian captain. Salbin had met his species before. They were cautious, careful, and preferred to avoid conflict whenever possible. "Zalarian vessel, this is Captain Yu of the Terran reconnaissance ship Horizon. May I ask what brings your fleet to this system?" The alien captain's expression was firm, almost defiant. "We received word of what your people did here. How you fought for strangers, how you freed prisoners from dozens of worlds without asking for anything in return." Before Salbin could respond, another voice cut into the communication channel. "This is Commander Vek of the Vorthan Battle Group. We came because we heard the Deathworlders showed us what real strength looks like." Moran Medical Fleet requesting permission to join the formation added a third voice, high-pitched and melodic. "Our healers want to help the rescued slaves." Salbin felt a strange emotion rising in her chest. Pride, maybe, but mixed with something else. These species had suffered under Korthok oppression for generations, accepting it as an unchangeable fact of life. They'd never fought back because they believed resistance was hopeless. Then, humans had arrived, and proven that hopeless was just another word for nobody tried hard enough yet. "How did word spread so quickly?" Salbin asked. The Zalarian captains' expression softened. "The freed slaves, Captain, told their families, who told their neighbors, who told their friends on other worlds. The story spread faster than light-speed communications. They said the Deathworlders came not for profit or territory, but simply because someone asked for help." A new voice joined the conversation, this one belonging to a species Salbin didn't recognize. "We heard that humans believe the strong should protect the weak. This idea changes everything." Salbin looked out at the growing fleet of alien vessels, each one representing a species that had decided they were tired of living in fear. For centuries, the Korthok Empire had ruled through terror, convincing everyone that resistance was impossible. But humans had done something more powerful than winning battles. They'd given the galaxy a new idea. Ordinary people could choose to be heroes. The revolution had begun. Admiral Park Taemin watched through the viewport of the Resilience as the last Korthok battlecruiser powered down its weapons. Around his flagship, an incredible sight unfolded. Ships from 37 different species flying in formation together. Zalarian destroyers flew alongside Vorthan fighters. Moran medical vessels worked next to Klaxon assault ships. Species that had been enemies for centuries were now brothers in arms. The final battle had lasted only 6 hours. The Korthok Empire, which had terrorized the galaxy for 300 years, had simply ... collapsed. Not because they were outgunned, but because they couldn't understand what they were fighting against. "Sir, we're receiving surrender transmissions." From all remaining Korthok vessels, reported Communications Officer Song Hai Jin. Her voice carried a note of disbelief. "Admiral Vrex is requesting terms." Park nodded slowly. The Korthok had built their entire empire on a simple idea: the strong take what they want, and the weak submit or die. It was brutal, but it was predictable. Everyone understood the rules. Then humans had arrived and thrown out the rulebook entirely. "Tell Admiral Vrex that the terms are simple," Park said. "Release all prisoners, withdraw to your home systems, and don't come back, sir. Shouldn't we demand reparations? Territory? Some kind of tribute?" asked his tactical officer, Major Yoon, Seung-Ho. Park shook his head. "We didn't come here to conquer. We came to help." Across the bridge, Dr. Kess approached with a datapad in her delicate Threnody hands. The alien scientist had spent weeks studying human behavior, trying to understand how her rescuers could be simultaneously the most violent and most compassionate beings she'd ever encountered. "Admiral Park," she said, her voice filled with excitement. "The Threnody Council has reached a decision. We wish to formalize an alliance with humanity. We're calling it the Mutual Defense Compact, an agreement that any attack on one member is an attack on all." Park looked up from his command station. "Dr. Kess, we don't need treaties to help people. If someone's in trouble, we'll come. That's just who we are." Kess smiled, her large eyes bright with something that looked like hope. "No, Admiral. But the rest of the galaxy needs to learn that such people exist. They need to know that there's an alternative to the Korthok way of thinking." As if to prove her point, Captain Usalban's voice crackled over the communication system. "Admiral, we're receiving requests from 18 different species asking about joining this mutual defense compact. They want to know how to fight, like humans." Park looked out at the assembled fleet again. Ships that had spent centuries hiding from bullies were now flying together as equals. Korthok Empire hadn't just been defeated, it had been made irrelevant. The galaxy would never be the same. The age of might makes right was ending, replaced by something humans had always believed. That real strength came from protecting those who couldn't protect themselves. 37 species had learned. They could be heroes if they chose to be. The revolution was complete.